Hey there, this is Pete LeVasseur of the newly formed Rust content team in the Rust project. I'm sitting down today with Tyler Mandry, who is co-lead of the Rust language team in the project. And I thought we'd have a chance to sit down and have a little bit of a chat. So share it with you all. So thanks for joining today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Could you start out with maybe telling me a little bit about yourself, your involvement with Rust, kind of your path to finding yourself here?
Sure. Yeah, so I mean, I've been programming since I was a kid. I started with teaching myself QBasic when I was like 9 years old or something. I had a lot of professional experience later on with mostly C++. Um, and I mean, the first time I heard about Rust, I was like, okay, good luck. Like, I don't know, a bunch of starry-eyed people at Mozilla think they're going to take on the C++ juggernaut. Um, and I just kept running into places where I was having problems that Rust actually solved, and eventually it kind of became too much to ignore. I think one of the eye-opening moments for me was I recently joined a startup, and um, they were having they had this big C++ code base, and they were having a lot of trouble tracking down bugs and in race conditions actually. And so one of the first things that they assigned to me was, hey, you need to help track down some of these bugs. And it was like, there are like senior engineers in the company, and then there was like more junior people who are more like research focused. And of course, like the senior engineers are saying, oh, yeah, these junior engineers can't write C++. So I spend like, at one point I spent like 2 weeks of nothing but debugging. And eventually I found the bug. And lo and behold, it was in code that one of the senior engineers had written. Um, and
Classic.
classic. It truly is. I mean, I think it just goes to show that writing, writing low-level systems code, concurrent code, it's very hard to do correctly, especially if you don't have the kind of guardrails that Rust provides. What really kind of converted me to being a Rust fan, that was reading some of the blog posts by like early Rust people like Aaron Saran, Nico, Manish, and I could just see the level of thoughtfulness and empathy that they were conveying. And so not only was it hitting on the technical points, it's also hitting on these other like softer points that I think are actually really important to have a successful project, and also just kind of express a lot of the values that I kind of wanted to. Those values resonated with me a lot. So yeah, at that point I decided I wanted to invest my career in Rust, and I did so. Um, I joined the compiler team. I implemented a feature called generic associated types in a project called Chalk, which was supposed to be the new hotness next generation trait solver. Now we have a new next generation trait solver that people are actually working to ship in the compiler. I wrote some optimizations for coroutines, um, and then eventually got invited to join the language team. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's it in
yeah.
a nutshell.
Thanks for sharing kind of your journey, like your path from there to here. I think, yeah, hearing these kinds of stories is very interesting. I think everyone has their own unique like background and perspective, but there tends to be things that crop up, like maybe limitations elsewhere that had occurred, and maybe being burned by one thing or the other, and then you feel, this thing, this language, this technology seems to check these boxes. And I appreciated your mention about empathy and about seeing this aspect as well. It's yeah, a lot of these aspects I think are nice to see in a language community where it's one thing to ship good technology, it's another thing to do it in a way that's very welcoming, I feel.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was very welcoming, and it was, I mean, it seemed like kind of the I might get in trouble for this, but it seemed like the prevailing culture of the industry at the time was, uh, let's just say it was a lot more snarky. Um, it was, you know, I don't know, it was I don't know, I don't know, it was just a very different culture. I mean, people were, like, less, I guess, just allowing you to be yourself, and less inviting of people who might be, like, I mean, not the incredibly skilled and knowledgeable hacker, but who are actually very intelligent and skilled, and I think that has been actually a huge part of Rust's success. I mean, if I look at the Rust project now today, I mean, it's actually filled with people who, I mean, like many of whom wouldn't have found a home in other language communities, but they felt like Rust was very welcoming to them, and they've contributed so much. And I mean, I'm seeing new faces in the Rust project all the time. So I think that's incredibly healthy and an incredibly good sign for Rust.
For, sustainability,
Yeah,
long-term, growth. Yeah, for
exactly.
sure.
Yeah.
So touching on a point that you'd raised, you're now, co-lead of the Rust language team. I think there's folks that sort of look at the Rust project and they might have a bunch of question marks suddenly appear over their head. They're wondering what goes on in the Rust project. They may be more maybe reading like the Rust Reddit or the forums and things and see things happening and maybe not know what's going on within the project. Could you help me maybe like unpack and explain what maybe day to day or week to week that looks like for, say, a co-lead of a project team and what goes into it?
Well, there are a bunch of smoke-filled rooms. No, I'm kidding.
Robes are involved. Yeah, no,
Some
okay.
initiation practices. No, I'm kidding. No, all of our meetings are actually open, so people can join. We have 2 regular meetings a week for Lang team. One of them is a triage meeting where we kind of like go through a bunch of smaller things. Uh, I mean, they might be big efforts from the person working on them, but for laying team, it's kind of like, okay, we need to check off that you can ship this bug fix to technically a breaking change, but we've run it on Crater, and we've seen that it like impacts no actual Rust code, or like we patch the crates that we broke. So you do a lot of that, new lints, that sort of thing. And then we also have a weekly design meeting which is where we talk about bigger things. We talk about, let's say, more speculative work that like might be a new feature in the language. We're giving like all the language team members are sort of giving guidance of like our thinking and the direction that we would like to go. And often that's used to guide experiments in the compiler, or like RFCs that get written.
Nice. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
so
I
I
guess
guess
what you're saying is that it's not
not
all
all
that
that
mysterious,
mysterious,
I
I
suppose.
suppose.
The
The
meetings
meetings
are
are
open,
open,
so
so
if
if
there's a member of the community that has an idea for some language feature, or they just want to kind of pitch in and get
get
involved,
involved,
they
they
can
can
do
do
so.
so.
What's
What's
sort
sort
of
of
the
the
best
best
way
way
for
for
them
them
to
to
do
do
so?
so?
Is
Is
it
it
getting on like
like
the
the
Rust
Rust
Zulip
Zulip
and
and
sort of saying, hey, maybe you could give a little bit of an
sure,
intro
sure.
on that?
Yeah, I these days Zulip is kind of where everything happens. Not the synchronous meetings, although some teams do have meetings in Zulip. Um, but yeah, pretty much everything kind of revolves around the Rust Zulip. Also, there's a language team website where we list like the dates and times of all the meetings. So you can check that out. Unfortunately, a lot of um, the documentation for stuff like meetings and how to get involved is kind of scattered throughout the project, and that's
Hmm.
one thing I'd like to see us improve on. Um, at the Rust All Hands, I think David Wood was leading a session where he was talking about we need to like centralize it all in one place, and I'd really like to see that happen. But yeah, for now, I would go to the Rust language team website, hop on Zulip. There should be links to like everything that you would need to know. Another really good entry point, though, if you're interested in tackling a project that might span months, would be project goals. I think we're on our third cycle of project goals right now, and I feel like it's really, it's really, we're really hitting like a nice pace where we have like new people coming in, and I personally am really enjoying like working with some of the people like Beno, like Apo, who are working on language features like field projection and like reborrowing and stuff. These are people who aren't, didn't start out super involved in the Rust project, but they proposed a project goal, which was saying, hey, I want to commit resources to working on this feature. Do you like this? Will you support me in doing so? And like it's a good formal way to ask the language team or the compiler team or whatever teams that you might need support from for that support and get feedback. So that's a really good entry point these days.
Oh, cool. So, just speaking logistically, like they might go on the Rust Zulip and chat a little bit there, maybe show up to some meetings and say, hey, I have this kind of thing I'd like to work on. And then that could kind of snowball from there into being turned into a project goal potentially.
Yeah. I think it's a good idea to maybe join a meeting or two, get to know the vibes, and then you can propose a project goal. We have cycles twice a year for project goals. So, we just are wrapping up the RFC for the second half of 2025. And then I think probably in December, January timeframe, we'll have another call for new proposals.
Very cool. All right. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that insight. I think it's a really great way for folks to get more involved. Speaking personally, I don't know, I felt that maybe the Rust project is a bit impenetrable, a little bit scary, but I just started showing up to T-Spec meetings for the spec team, and just sort of one thing led to the another, and now I'm sort of a goal champion for the second half of 2025 for some things related to safety critical. So
Nice.
it's just a matter of, I think, showing up and being interested and being willing to help out. So
Yeah.
it wasn't all that scary.
That's what I did. I like when I first wanted to get involved in Rust. I think I showed up to at the time there's something called the Traits Working Group, and I showed up to their meetings or maybe just in their Zulip stream, and basically said, hey, I want to work on something. What do you recommend? And that was a nice experience. It doesn't always work out that like people have something ready for you to work on. So, but yeah, in that case they did, and it was a nice introduction. I think I was doing like a whole bunch of refactoring and like actually some pretty intense like debugging of weird stuff that was happening in the compiler. But it didn't. All I was doing was like comparing like this giant stream of logs from one compiler invocation to another, and kind of reverse engineering how some things worked. So
they were happy to have like a pair of hands to help.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah. So yeah, showing up, saying you're interested, maybe there's work for you to do, or maybe you can propose work, but the doors are open, right? So doors are open for folks to come in and get involved. So then, so getting a little bit deeper into the Lang team, you'd mentioned that, you're the co-lead. Actually, I'd mentioned you're the co-lead. And one of the things I'm curious about is Rust is now becoming a bit more of a mature language, right? So it's like 10 years of Rust from stable. Like this is really awesome milestone and achievement. I'm curious, when you are on the Lang team, are you hearing about challenges that folks are facing? Are you seeing some of these proposals that are coming up? what tends to work well for getting an RFC to a successful stage, to getting something implemented? Are there certain things that are like do's or don'ts or suggestions on ways to, if you have this way of improving Rust to make it land in a nice way?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, I mean, you have to start with having some vision that motivates people. And I guess this is one kind of mistake I see, or one thing I'd like to see more of is those motivating visions. I think, you know, people tend to want to change Rust these days in like the smallest possible way because, well, I mean, the language team has been like generally pretty conservative about what we ship and stabilize, and so it's understandable. But I think we do need like some sense of where we're going and where you want this to go. And like we have our own ideas, right? Like it's obviously going to be a conversation, but the more we can kind of sync up on a general direction, and like we might not be sure how far we want to take this, but understanding like how where it can go and how this can fit into a larger picture for the development of the language is important. Um, in terms of, yeah, getting RFCs accepted, I think we've gradually shifted more in the direction of doing more experimentation in the compiler. Um, I think you could argue that we've always done this, but it used to be that someone would write an RFC and say, "Hey, I want to add this feature." Um, it wouldn't be incredibly well specified, which isn't like an RFC author's fault. Most times, really you just kind of have to go implement it to
Mm.
understand the actual constraints that you're working with, in a lot of cases. So we've moved a lot more in the direction of doing experiments first, and the process for getting an experiment approved is kind of just like Lang team vibe check sort of thing, where you just need a member of the Lang team who's willing to put a little bit of time into working with you and kind of guiding you. You do need some experience in the compiler as well. So like there are other ways of getting that, kind of like I was talking about. But yeah, starting with experiments has been, I think, has worked out quite well for us.
Yeah, so one of the framings that I've heard for sort of making decisions is around the concept of knowing what is like a one-way door and what is not a one-way door.
Mhm.
Does this ever come up in like the decision-making process to kind of give
All
yourselves
the time.
flexibility?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, flexibility is really important to the Lang team. So we we're all kind of, I mean, I don't know. Language design is like we're all kind of making this up as we go along, right? Um, and you know, sometimes we have a very strong idea of where we want the language to go, but um, a lot of times it's we think this might be right, but we're going to learn a lot along the way, and so we want to make sure that we have options to fix something if we got it wrong, that we're not sort of limiting our ability to um, ship new language features in the future. Um, so it's always a balancing act. I mean, you can't have full optionality. The best way to have full optionality is just never to ship anything. But I think people want Rust to be a useful language for their use case, and they want it to be a nice, supportive experience. And so inherently that involves developing the language and evolving it. We don't want it to be a dead language. We want it to be a living language, right? Um, so yeah, I mean, having that optionality, understanding, yeah, like you said, one-way doors and two-way doors is important. I think that you don't have to have a very fine-grained idea of this when you're starting out to work on a feature. Sometimes that kind of emerges as you explore the problem space
Mm.
more. Um, and language design can be a very big problem space when you dig into different problems. So, and different people have different ideas that you never thought about. So, it's not a requirement that you fully grok and understand every aspect of it. I think literally that's like nobody has ever done that. Uh, nobody I know has ever done that, I'd say. Um, uh, with any particular thing that they were starting to work on, you build that over time, and it's an iterative process. It's a collaborative thing.
Right.
You don't need to be like the person, in their basement who has like yeah, I don't know, a cork board with like a million like
We
strands
love
of
basement
yarn.
enjoyers, though.
We
But
do love
we
basement
love basement
enjoyers,
enjoyers, I
but it's
think,
not a requirement.
but I think I've heard. So maybe a framing for this might be like the map is not the territory, right? Like you're gonna like at the beginning map out what you think should happen or could happen, maybe in the context of this sort of experiment, and then you sort of like take this map and you set out into the wilderness and you sort of see in reality what might need to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. So okay, that makes a lot of sense. Um, and so then I wanted to follow up a little bit more on this. You had mentioned about having this vision and sort of historically maybe things starting to become a little bit conservative on the language side. I'm wondering if there's this perception or maybe this like fear around larger changes and maybe there's something you can unpack there for me a little bit. Like, is there something that you think could help with making larger changes, or maybe what's on the other side of making larger changes, what benefits those have?
Yeah, in general, I think people are too scared to change Rust. Um, I mean, it needs to be this evolving language. There's, I guess I see a lot of kind of status quo bias and like we've always had this limitation, so it's okay to continue. But I guess personally, I'm not completely satisfied by that. Um, obviously, the specifics matter a lot, but um, I I personally want to see Rust grow and evolve into a language that not only gets like these very principled mechanics right, but it does it in a way that feels really nice to people. And I think there's a lot of ways that it does feel nice to people, but there's also ways that it doesn't. And I don't want to. I don't know. It's kind of like this concept of uh, learned helplessness or something. Uh,
Mm,
like eventually you've gotten so used to it that you kind of stop imagining that it can be better. Um, and I understand why. Like, I mean, I think the language team has also been guilty of this. I mean, I've been guilty of this. It's much easier to to preserve that optionality that I was talking about when you're shipping a small delta that you don't have to um, analyze in complete depth. Um, so that gets back to the tension I'm talking about. But I think in a lot of cases, um, I mean, this is why I care a lot about having a more complete vision because um, you can ship small deltas that are working toward a more complete vision a lot of times. And if we don't know the vision that we're working toward, my worry is that we end up with like a bunch of like little tiny things kind of piled on top of each other that don't feel cohesive.
mm. That don't
Um,
Lego brick themselves together in a way that
they
sort
don't
of makes
right.
sense.
They don't right. Either mechanically, so they don't compose well on the language,
Mm,
or conceptually, they don't like build on like a story and understanding of how Rust works. And I think we can continue to evolve that over time, that understanding.
yeah, makes sense. And so there's this Rust Vision doc concept that's kind of floating out there, and interviews are happening, and these sorts of things. So has there been discussion amongst the Lang team, or any thoughts around sort of how to take some of that output and incorporate it, integrate it? I don't know if any has showed up at your doorstep yet to
To
the
the
Lang
Lang
team,
team,
but
but
I'm
I'm
curious.
curious. I'm looking forward to Nico's talk about the vision doc.
Okay.
Yeah, I saw him talking about it. I personally haven't been very involved with it, but I yeah, I guess I'm looking forward to seeing what results people get. I've personally seen a lot of um, struggles that people have had. My perspective has bias. Everyone's perspective has bias. So um, I don't know how much that's reflected in the wider user world. I mean, certainly I've talked with people that have shared some of the struggles, like with Interop and so on, that I'm interested in. But um, yeah, there's others, completely different perspectives. I mean, I know you're like interested in safety critical work and
Guilty as charged. Yeah.
and that's like not something that I personally know very much about. I don't understand all of the constraints very deeply, so yeah, I'm looking forward to getting kind of a more well-rounded picture um, of ways that people are using Rust or want to use Rust, and using that to inform our decisions and kind of our vision going forward. But um, yeah, I guess as of now, I think the vision doc work um, hasn't really shown up on my
Hasn't shown up in your
input
inbox yet
in my inbox.
as like, do this now.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of thing. Yeah. So full disclosure, I am on the Rust Vision Doc team as well. So I'm asking some leading questions here of Tyler. But yeah, I hope that a lot of these things can, as you said, help with maybe a more well-rounded perspective, because I think everybody comes into this with some bias of what they sort of need for their company or their industry and these sorts of things. And so I think the hope is providing enough sort of flavor, enough texture to the inputs given to teams and shared with the broader Rust community what's going on in the Vision Doc to really help understand, the why. Because it's one thing for somebody to show up and say, hey, do ABC. It's another thing to show up and say, and this will unlock the ability for this industry to ship software in a place that it has not yet before, right? So
Yeah.
so you brought up Interop. Okay, so now I have to press you on this. So you'll even talk a little bit later today about this C++ Rust concept, maybe what goes into this. We had the C++ Rust sort of interop room yesterday that we were locked in.
Yeah.
We were allowed to leave for sustenance, which was nice, but had a lot of good chats. So I'm really curious about what does this interop work really mean to you? Like what comes out the other side of having enabled smoother interop between C++ and Rust?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm wondering how to put this. I guess interop is what interop is what lets Rust take over the world, basically. Um, and I don't mean take over the world as in people are never going to write other languages. I mean, they will. I think other languages will continue to exist and have as big of a role as they do today, more or less. But Rust is not. Rust is working very well in a lot of spaces where you're writing brand new code. What we call kind of greenfield projects. And it's not working well in spaces where there's just a lot of code in other languages, a lot of libraries that are just like critical for getting your work done and that you can't easily call into. I've had, a lot of personal projects and, um, I've seen a lot of things where I talk to people that I work with that, um, they want to use Rust, but it's basically impossible for them to do so. And so, I think about areas like robotics, areas like gaming, where you've got, and I mean, there are thousands of these, right? Where there's so much stuff that's been built up in C++, or in Java, or in Python. In Python, we actually have a pretty good interop story for today, but most other languages we really don't. And I think the benefits that Rust brings of like this reliability, just kind of it's very predictable in what you get out. Writing Rust code might take a little bit longer up front, but I think it saves so much time when you're debugging something, when you're actually maintaining something in production. And it really, I mean, it makes our software more reliable. I'm excited to see, and we're already seeing it to an extent, but I'm really excited to see how, how deploying Rust to more spaces will just completely shift the standard for reliability, for security, in our industry. And I mean, personally, like, I have a smartphone, and like, I like to get mad at technology. I think other
It's a
people might relate
pastime
this.
that's favored by many that
It's
sit behind
one of my
keyboards.
favorite
So
pastimes,
yes,
actually. I don't know what that says about me, but
or us as a group of technologists and what we like to do. So yes,
right. I think software needs to be better. I think like our industry has been around for a long time. There's a lot of money floating around in it, and we can do better. And I think Rust is a really good tool for helping us do better.
got it. Yeah, and so touching on a bit of what you were saying, so
So
sort of more for like brownfield projects
projects
where like, okay, it's not brand new, you have a bunch of C++ code that's there. Are there things that people might want to look into, or things that they might be interested in exploring in this space if they say want to do this maybe within their company or within their project that's already using C++? Other technologies and things that they should go out and search for?
If they need interop to their
C++,
existing
for
C++,
example. Yeah.
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 Yeah, I mean, there are some good projects out there. I mean, off the shelf, I think CXX, a lot of people have used that and enjoyed it. I mean, I'll be giving a talk here at RustConf about with my colleague Taylor Kramer about partly about an interop solution at Google that I've helped with called Crubit, and that is not ready for people to adopt today. So if you
It's ready for
tried it,
contributors to come maybe help build out, maybe. Yes?
not
No?
even that
Not
yet,
even that. Okay.
unfortunately, but that is the eventual vision.
Okay.
So it is on GitHub. You can go check it out, poke around. If your build system isn't Bazel and like you're not using Clang, like there's a whole lot of stuff that has to line
Sort of a
up. But
checklist of things that,
yeah,
if you satisfy these, then it could be a good choice.
yeah. But one of the things we're going to be talking about is our vision for making it much more of like a plug and play solution where you can kind of depending on what your constraints are, and every project has very different constraints, I've learned. Depending on what your constraints are, you can kind of use some or all of the project. You can fully integrate it into your build system, or maybe you like do some pre-generation step and like check in some generated files. Like, so it's going to be a lot more flexible over time. I mean, my personal understanding is that we've seen maybe the first wave of interop tools was tools like bindgen and cbindgen that are incredibly useful tools, but they're also incredibly limited in some ways. And CXX came around, and that I mean, that was specifically targeting C++, and that that sort of raised the level of like kind of high level code you could actually interoperate with. it has a lot of limitations too. So I think, next we're going to see hopefully a third wave of interop solutions that starts to feel a lot more integrated.
Okay, so if you're like a third wave coffee enjoyer, like
Yeah.
this may be the wave for you.
It's funny because I totally am. I'm totally a coffee snob. So
Okay, all right. So this is the wave you're a part of. You're going to bring the third wave of coffee and of Rust, maybe C++ interop. Okay, all right,
exactly.
beautiful. So then, like pivoting just a little bit, I'm curious. In sort of maybe day-to-day of using Rust or in personal projects or anything like this, could you maybe tell me about some things that have stood out for you when using Rust, whether those be like limitations or things like, oh yeah, this was a really neat feature that I might not have been aware of or haven't used before. Do you have any things that kind of stood out like that?
Yeah, I mean, I can go through the list. I So, I mean, the biggest thing I was recently excited about was shipping iflet chains. I always would run into that and have like iflet nested with an iflet, and so I've enjoyed being able to refactor some of my code. Before that, it was let else. I was so excited about let else.
Yes, I was a let else enjoyer.
Yeah,
Yes.
great,
So yeah.
great. Yeah, so yeah, I guess like in let's say the broader picture, I've one of my hobby projects has been writing a window manager for Mac OS, a tiling window manager for Mac OS, which is, I mean, well, it's not easy to do, for a number of reasons, but, um, so my first iteration, so I've actually written like 3 versions of this window manager over like 10 years, maybe more. My
Third
f
system syndrome.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
now it's Thursday. Yeah, so the third one is in Rust, but I'll get to that. So the first one was in Lua, built on top of something called Hammerspoon, which is like a system automation thing for Mac OS. Then I wrote a new iteration in Swift, and thinking Swift would give me a lot better access to like the APIs in Mac OS. I could integrate it better. Um, my biggest mistake, I think, with that one was that I tried to like write the framework for writing all window managers, and like that was just way too ambitious. Um, and I also ran into some limitations. I think maybe it's gotten better, but Swift just doesn't have quite the ecosystem that Rust does for stuff like logging, for stuff like that really like make your daily life better.
Hmm.
Um, and so eventually I decided to come back and rewrite it in Rust because, I don't know, I'm a hopeless Rust enjoyer, right? And that's been really fun. It has definitely come with its challenges. Rust doesn't, I mean, Interop being one of them, right?
Hmm.
Um, you know, since I first started looking into Rust, Interop has gotten a lot better for those APIs. There's like an Objective C, the Objective C2 crates are really quite good. Um, it's kind of funny to me that like the best route for Interop with, we're not going through Swift, we're going through like the ancient Objective C stuff, but like that's actually much easier to interoperate with. So yeah, so I've um, had some fun, you know, tackling those challenges. It's been a bit of a puzzle, but yeah, I mean, Rust's like async support, has really good, it's really nice channels and stuff. Like, I mean, a bunch of different crates. Like, there's the Tokyo channels, Crossbeam, and so on that, um, make it really nice. So it uses like an actor uh, architecture, which has been a really nice fit for that particular problem space. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Nice. So this is what you do with your third wave coffee. You like sort of roll up to your desk, maybe
Yeah, I
after the
bring the
day of work, and you're
coffee.
like, okay,
Time to make
time to lock in and work on
the little rectangle move over
move
here
that
in
way
this
and
way. Yeah,
nice.
like I
Nice. So is this like people can go use this, or is this like still alpha, or where does this sit?
Uh, it's I would call it alpha or beta. I'm not trying to like get a bunch of users for my window manager, but people can check it out. It is on GitHub. Be prepared for bugs and not a whole lot of documentation. I'm kind of just doing it to scratch my own itch now, but I do enjoy getting feedback from people who try it and tell me why it's completely not ready for them. So yeah.
So some sort of trickle of maybe like early users that are happy to maybe open issues or something like that.
Yeah, if
It
you
would be kind of
really
what it's like.
want, if you really want i3 like window manager for Mac OS, and for some reason the aerospace doesn't work for you, then come check out Glide.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Nice, nice. And so one thing that I'd like to really ask about is you've kind of worn different hats over the years, interacting as part of the project and then also working on things professionally to do with Rust. And I'm just curious, have you run into a time where you thought, okay, at first, okay, I should use Rust for this. This could be a really good fit. But then for one reason or the other, it turned out that maybe it wasn't, and maybe you had decided ultimately not to use Rust for that case, for that project, that thing that you ended up working on.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I think,
If the answer is no, that's also good. We can just cut video and be
well,
like, Rust is good for everything. So,
I wouldn't say that. I mean, I think I mean, we were talking earlier about the challenges with Interop. So, I mean, um, if I had tried to write that second iteration or the first iteration of the window manager in Rust, like, it just wouldn't have worked. So I think that's an example of where better Interop just really enables people to use Rust in more places. Um, things like shell scripts or I mean, I think there's a lot of places where you know Python can be a better fit, either because you just don't have like um, maybe you're writing some tool and like you don't want to build and deploy something. So there's definitely places where it's not the best fit. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. People are using Rust for more web stuff, but it's not like a mature, writing your web front end in Rust is still like a thing that like people do, and it's weird, right? Um, so I mean, yeah, sometimes you want to use languages for their strengths and like have a nice happy path, right? Other times you're willing to take a less happy path because I don't know, you're determined. And there's other stuff on the other side, like I really enjoy like the tracing crates and um, just like the error handling, etc. Serialization, Serde, like all that stuff is really nice. So sometimes it's better to pay a little bit more up front so you can overcome that initial hump, so you get like all the nice stuff on the other side. And sometimes it's just going to be hard all the way. Like, if you're doing front end development, I mean, I haven't tried like Leptos or any of those. So I think people are doing it. It's just you have to be kind of determined and knowledgeable in that space, I think, probably to be successful. So in those cases, it's better to go with the better lit path in another language.
Yeah, and you were mentioning before that constraints, right? There's plenty of constraints that could mean that you should maybe opt for Python here, opt for TypeScript there, depending on what you're doing. But there may be also constraints that mean that, oh, actually, yeah, we want to have everything written in maybe like Rust because our engineering team is primarily using Rust, and therefore it'll be kind of easier for people to hop back and forth. So there's all sorts of, I guess, practical considerations that could come up
Yep,
in here. So
for sure.
makes a lot of sense. So I think we're kind of reaching the part where we're winding down a little bit, and I wanted to ask if you had something to share, just anything you wanted to shout out, things like this that you'd like to kind of wrap up on.
Yeah, I've Well, mostly I've really been grateful for the time I've been able to spend in the Rust project. I've enjoyed all the people I've interacted with, and how welcome the community has been. So yeah, I want to express some gratitude for that. And yeah, I think it's a it's a cultural thing. It's not something we can take for granted. I think it's something we all have to be kind of doing and propagating every day. So yeah, let's keep that spirit alive. Let's keep let's stay welcoming, and um, just being willing to accept people where they are, and allow them to kind of contribute their best. I mean, I've benefited a ton from that personally, and I want the Rust project and the Rust community to remain a space where people can have that experience.
Nice. Yeah, I think it's a beautiful note to end on. And yeah, so with that, this is Pete and this is Tyler signing off for this wonderful interview that Tyler's willing to sit down and have with us. So thanks. I imagine that we'll probably put some links or some things together that'll be available for various things, including if you'd like to go Glide, what is it called? If you'd like to go hang
Yeah,
out
it's
and try
Glide
Glide
Range
and
I've
submit issues to.
been contributing to. Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, thanks so much for listening in or watching along, and take care. Bye.